Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery. You're watching Tuesday's Tip of the Week number 96. In today's video, we're going to be going over 3 different areas that may be causing some up and down bobbing on target or cause you to be holding low on target. In our members video, we are also going to break down some areas that help you with overall float, getting a better hold on target, and having a steadier sight picture. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is our drawing motion. This is one that I see a lot in especially newer archers, but just archers coming over from a hunting industry or some other form of the sport. So when we are drawing the bow, we have to look at how our bodies need to work biomechanically, which just meaning the natural motions of our body, what is easier in motions for certain joints and things that'll help us with an advantage versus a disadvantage. A lot of the times what I see with archers is they actually will draw their bow below the target and then try to lift their bow up. And the reason this is causing you to have a low hold on target or be fighting a bob motion up and down on target is because our shoulder joint, when it's under load, is not designed to lift as easily as it is to settle. So if you want to test this, you can have somebody hold down on your hand for your bow arm side, or you can just pick up something like a water jug, milk jug, something like that that's heavy, and you can try to lift that up and then try to raise it up above your head and then just try to let it come back down and see with your hand over the shoulder what that feels like. And you'll actually feel that the muscles in that joint are crunching together as you're trying to lift up while you're under load. So what we can do to combat that is also going to help us seat the shoulder joint as well. And that's just having a correct draw motion where we actually start with the bow arm slightly above the shoulder. And the reason we want to do that is because as we are drawing the bow back, it is transferring the weight all the way to our core and our mass of our body. This is going to start seating every joint, our wrist, our elbow, and our shoulder. And it's going to allow those joints to actually work for us and stabilize the motion that we're seeing on target, and it's going to take out the little liquid air gaps and everything in those joints themselves. Once we get to full draw, we still want to have that bow hand just above the shoulder or at the very minimum level with that shoulder. And the reason we want to do this is because we need to think of this like a seesaw, and the way that the weight of the bow itself is affected by the height compared to our body. If our bow hand is at the shoulder height or above it, the weight of the object that we're holding, our bow, is transferred to the core, to the center of our body. So it's easier to hold that bow up. If we have the hand down below the shoulder, then that means that we're actually taking all of that weight of the bow and we're transferring it to the hand, and we're relying on the arm, our core muscles and everything with our neck, back, stuff like that to hold up the bow by itself. The bow is going to feel massively heavier. It's going to be much harder to have a steady aim on target in your sight picture. It's all going to just fall apart for you. If you are in that camp where your hand is low, there's some areas to look for. Big one is draw length. A lot of the times people are too short on their draw length. They have a bend in their elbow, something's going on like that. Their shoulder is scrunched up, and this is causing them to have their hand too low on target. The other one could be peep height, and then the reason that is affecting us is because the way that we're anchoring and the way that we're having to get on target. So those are some areas to look for if this is an issue for you. And if not, and it's just a technique, it's super easy to start forcing yourself, drawing back, getting into that motion, and being able to settle into target and have a better aim. All right, the second thing that we're going to look at here is not having enough front weight on our bow and having inconsistent pulling pressures through the shot. A lot of the times you see this with a hunting bow setup especially, but even on target rigs, this is very popular that I see from time to time as well. And it's just not having enough weight on the front of the bow to combat what we're pulling. If you look at this from an equilibrium standpoint or a seesaw standpoint, if you want to look at that analogy like we did in the last episode or the last segment here, if we are taking a bow that is balanced at brace, so when we're not holding it back at full draw and it's just balanced, and then we start pulling back on it, that bow is going to want to rock and pull up off the target. So we have to actually have weight on the front of that bow to help combat that. As a side benefit, that weight on the front also minimizes what we see a lot of the times with left and right pin movement, but it can dampen what we're looking at overall as a sight picture and some bobs and messed up jerks and tendencies that we may have. It won't show as big downrange when we have that weight. You don't want to go too extreme with this, obviously, but having that weight out there until you see the sight picture not moving and darting left and right as bad will typically mean you have enough front weight. But another way that we can check this is by studying our float and what we are seeing on target. Now, what we're seeing here is through the Mantis program. This is a program that tracks data through our shot. This is actually attached to my bow while I'm aiming and while I'm shooting. Hey guys, real quick, while I was editing, I realized I didn't explain this program, and this isn't gonna make sense if I don't. So when this program, the way that it works is wherever the shot broke, it deems that as the middle of the target that you're seeing on this program. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at the bobbing up and down or the holding high on target and the shot breaking. I was actually above the middle when the shot broke, but it's going to show that it was on the middle on this program. So it's actually going to show the float being below the middle, but just creeping up and then it happening in the middle right at the end. So keep that in mind. Same thing with the bobbing up and down. That one's a little easier to see, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. This is going to be an example of just not having enough front weight. And if I pull into my shot, steady myself up and work through my shot, you will actually notice that my pin is starting to drift and go above the center of the target. And that's because I don't have enough weight to counterbalance what I'm pulling. Now, a lot of the times what will happen with people is they notice this happening and then they start to relax either their bow arm and they are not holding the bow up as steady as they were before. Maybe their shoulder muscles are disengaging, or they start to lessen their pull on target. Now, this is especially important if you're a resistance style release shooter. It's going to make it very hard for you to actually make the shot happen. Or if you're trying to use back tension to fire release, this is going to make it very hard for you as well. And you'll notice here that as I am seeing my pin go up on the target, I'm actually relaxing and it's causing the pin to come down, but it's creating an excess effect to where the pin is going below the middle. And then I'm having to create more tension back in my body or lift the bow back up, and I'm overcorrecting and it's causing a lot of bobs on target. And then in some cases, I've seen people, when this happens to them, they'll freeze low and below the target because they start to have some aiming anxieties happen and some other factors working in as well, and they just can't pull anymore and create some issues. So we want to make sure that we are loading the front of the bow up with enough weight to counterbalance the pull that we're going to have on target to either steady our shot if we're a stagnant style shooter and holding in place, or to counterbalance the pull if you're trying to use back tension to execute a release. All right, guys, in our third segment here, we're going to talk about our front shoulder and if it's collapsing and if it's creating issues for you. And this kind of pins off of that last segment that we had here in the video where we were talking about that front shoulder getting soft and not supporting the joint anymore, and then us trying to build our shot back up from there. Now, what I see commonly with people is, especially if they're using a resistance style release or if they're trying to use back tension to fire their release with their execution, is that if our front shoulder is getting soft because our draw length is not set up correctly, or we don't have enough front weight, or we're just fatigued because we're just not having the muscles built up yet to support this, that shoulder joint will actually come undone and hinge. And you'll notice that the shoulder will come up, it will come back towards your neck, towards your head, and you'll feel like you're pulling really hard, but you're just taking up slack from the shoulder moving towards your head and whatever you're pulling with that. So you're actually not increasing tension, and a lot of the times we're losing tension. And when this happens, because we're losing that tension, that is one area that will cause us to have a low hold on target. But usually this is also paired with when the shoulder comes up, it hinges, and you'll notice that If you look at my hand here and the height, if my shoulder comes up, that hand comes down. It's just naturally the way that our body wants to work. So that if this shoulder is coming up in place, this hand is coming down, I'm losing pressure in my pull, and everything starts to drop and hold low and freeze low on the target. And this will start creating aiming anxieties for people and problems for people, when in reality, a lot of the times your draw length is too short, could also be too long, and you just can't support the joint because it's too outstretched. But that's the common areas that I see with it. It's just a simple form correction or a fitment issue. We can also see that our peep height sometimes can create a problem with this too. If we have a peep height that is too low and close to our loop, we'll duck our head down. And for whatever reason, when you duck your head down, the shoulder wants to come up as well. So we're almost shrugging our shoulders and pulling our head down. So I see a lot of people run into that issue with our float and with the shoulder collapsing and creating problems because of that as well. I hope this video helped y'all out today. If you want to see the members only content that we have on this channel, there's a link down in the description of this video where you can check out what that looks like. Today's video that we'll have for the members channel, I'm going to go over some little areas that help me steady my float picture and help me that a lot of people don't think about unless they start actually measuring float or looking at it subjectively. So I'm going to give you some areas on that. We have a lot of extra videos that we put out there. You get one every time we do one here on Tuesday's Tip of the Week, plus a little bit more here and there. So thank everybody for watching. I'll see you soon.